Okay, so we're going to begin Parashat Vayeshev. That's this week's portion of the Torah. In this Parasha, there's a big emphasis on dreams. And so is there an emphasis on dreams in Parashat Miketz. You have the dream of Yosef, the various dreams that he had. You have the dreams of the Sarah Mashkim and Sarah Ofim, the butler, the baker. Next week's Parasha, you have the dream of Paro. It's incredible that the Torah puts such an emphasis on dreams. Obviously, because there's something to it. People think dreams are just dreams. Right? What exactly is a dream? The Hebrew word for a dream, chalom, is very similar to the Hebrew word chalon. In other words, that you are able, through this window, this chalon, you are able to see certain things at night when the body is asleep, which you could not see during the day when you were awake. When one is awake, the physical body does not let the human being see certain things. It is as though the neshama is in a cage. It cannot see everything that it could otherwise see. In a dream at night, when the physical body is asleep, then somehow the neshama is able to connect to the upper worlds, depending on its level. Not every neshama is able to see clear dreams, true dreams, and I have a whole lecture about dreams. What I want to, however, point out over here is what was the purpose of the dream of Yosef. We need to realize that there are different kinds of dreams. The vast majority of dreams have no relevance whatsoever, because they have to do with one's imagination, with one's temperament, with one's experiences and memories. They could be memories of the past, of some battle, some war. That is why sometimes people see nightmares, depending, of course, if they saw a movie, if they read some book. A lot of the experiences that we have during our life come back in a dream, and that is what we see many, many times. So we don't have to pay attention to every dream, but some dreams are true. And the ones that are true may contain a very important message. And that's exactly the type of dream that Yosef has. And the dreams that later on are described in the Torahs by Paro and the like. So what happens in the dream of Yosef? The dream of Yosef is very unusual because apparently it makes him look very important. He sees everyone bowing down to him, whether it's the brothers, whether it's the stars, and he has two dreams. And the two of them are very similar, and according to our tradition, two dreams, one after another, even though they're separate nights, that usually lends credibility to the dream. But because he shared this dream with his brothers, they had a hard time with it. Why? Why should they have a hard time with it? Well, if it's a real dream, if it's true, then it says, Vayikanubo, they were jealous of him. If it's not so true, that means he's been thinking about ruling over them, being a king over them. That, of course, they don't like, and they hated him for that. So regardless, whether it was a true dream or not, they were not very happy to hear about his dreams. But what really matters over here is the message of the dream. What does the dream come to tell us? Why does Yosef have this dream? Why did he have it? Obviously because he's the main star. It's about his role that he's about to play. So there's something that he needs to learn, but it's not only that he needs to learn, everyone else needs to hear the message of this dream. So what's the message? In the first dream, it's interesting. Yosef sees alumim, bundles of wheat bowing down to him. Now, if this was a dream about what he experienced during the day, the thoughts that he had, what he lived through, it doesn't make sense because they were herders, they had cattle, they had sheep, shepherds. So it doesn't really fit what he saw during the day or what he did during the day with what he saw in the dream. But what is a bundle? A bundle means a lot of stalks of wheat together. So the message is very clear. Yosef, the unity between you and your brothers is weak. You're not united enough. And this is especially critical now, right before you go down to Egypt.
Is it Yosef's fault?
Everyone's fault, and I'll talk about that. The unity amongst you is weak, and this is critical, especially so right before you go down to Egypt. The family of Yaakov is about to go down to Egypt. The Jewish people are about to multiply in Egypt and live there for a number of years before they receive the Torah. Unity is very important. And this is lacking. It's weak. So, in the bundles of the wheat, you have this message of you need to be united. Of course, the dream is telling Yosef that at some point he's also going to be in control somewhere. He doesn't know all the details of the dream. It is true, as we see later on, he is elevated to a very high status to become the viceroy in Egypt. But still, the message is not so much what's in store for the future. The dream is not just something, you want to know something about your future? Here, this is a detail you should know about your future. Yes, dreams do tell us certain things about the future, but what's important here is the message. These dreams are not just about the future, it's an important message that Yosef and the brothers need to learn. How do we know that the unity is very weak or lacking amongst them, amongst the brothers? Well, we see and we learn from the Parasha that the brothers, especially the children of Leah, the older children, would look down at the Bnei Shefachot, at the children of the maidservants, Bilha and Zilpa. They were like in a lower status. So the older brothers, children of Leah, looked down at them, did not respect them as much, were not nice to them. And what did Yosef do about this? He saw this, and he told his father. Now that was a mistake. You don't just go tell your father. You're going to make enemies very quickly like that. So that already weakened the connection between them. What else did Yosef do before he told him the dream? Yosef saw them doing certain things that were suspicious in his eyes, things that appeared to be very wrong. He went and told his dad, why don't you go tell them? Why don't you get closer and see for yourself if this is in fact what you suspect? A lot of people judge people without asking them, without getting a closer look, without examining the whole thing, and they judge, and they make a terrible mistake by judging them negatively, when in reality it's very, very far from the truth what they're seeing or what they're being told. So that was a mistake. That's called Lashon Hara, is to talk negatively or derogatory, and especially if you're saying things that are totally unfounded about someone. You have to be very, very careful what you say about others. Yosef is a teenager. The Torah records all of this in order for us to learn from.
But did they knew the halachot back then?
No. Remember, people are not perfect. The Torah records the mistakes of the best of people, so we should learn from it. And this includes even those who are knowledgeable and do know the halachot, and do know what is right and what is wrong still. People get caught up because of politics and because of all kinds of reasons, personal interests. And this is what happened over here. Now, what do the brothers do? When they see Yosef, they call him names too. Here comes the Baal HaHalomot. Here comes the dreamer. That's not nice either. Because as you begin to ridicule others, to make fun of others, that is the beginning. You're planting the seeds of Sinat Chinam, of baseless hatred. That's how it begins. By looking down, by making fun, calling names. I like to give the example of sometimes kids, friends, classmates who know each other, calling each other by the last name instead of the first name. You may say, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with calling somebody by his last name? Take, for example, Friedman. Hey, Friedman, come, I want to show you something. Why don't you call him by his first name? Moshe, Yitzchak, David.
Putting him down, probably.
People don't realize it sometimes. They think it's okay. The problem here is psychological. A person's first name is his true essence. And somehow some people do not want to connect or become too close to someone. They want to maintain a distance, artificial distance. So they use the last name. The last name is very insignificant and totally not important, unless of course you're filling out some form for Social Security or whatever, that they need to know your last name. What happened to his first name? Now, whenever I tell this to people who are in the army, they tell me, well, if you said Moshe and you called out Moshe, you may have 4 or 5 people turn around and say, yes, which Moshe? Then just say Moshe so-and-so. Say the entire name, because the first name is the one that's closest to the person. If you use that name, it shows a stronger connection. If you only call the person by his last name, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. Baseless hatred is a very, very serious problem. It has been, especially since the destruction of the Second Temple that came about as a result of baseless hatred. But how did it start? How does baseless hatred start? I mean, you have a people who share a lot in common, not just language, culture, religion, faith. Baseless hatred, which means for no real reason, where people don't care about each other. That's what it basically means. There's no real reason to hate him. Sinat chinam, baseless, for no real reason. Just, I don't want to have anything to do with him. I don't care about him. Mind your own business, they say. People are focused more into themselves than about the well-being of somebody else. This really began, as I explained in the past, with Tarbut Yavan, with the culture of the Greeks. And since Hanukkah is next week, it fits in perfectly. Greeks wanted to spread their philosophy, but it wasn't just a philosophy, it was a way of life. It is what they valued and what they thought was important. God was not central in their life. What was central and important in life? The human being. You got to go to the gym, you got to develop your muscles. That's what they emphasize. What do you think the Olympics started? Who is the best? Human being. Who's the fastest? Who's the strongest? Everything's centered around the human being. Well, if the human being is what's the most important, you can see how this could lead to people thinking of themselves as more important than someone else, instead of believing that all of mankind, all human beings are created in the image of God. There's a God. What does he expect of us? To respect each other, to care for each other. So these values were not in the Greek dictionary, even though they did believe perhaps in some power, but this supreme power who may be out there, who created the world, is not involved in this world. We've got to take care of ourselves. Man is the crown of creation, that's true. Yeah, but it's not only about you. There's other people around too. So this selfishness, this egocentricity, of where man is central, this spread. This was contagious. And you have a lot of Jews who became Hellenists. What's a Hellenist? Who adopted the Greek culture, not just the Greek language, the Greek ways, the Greek way of thinking. And that was the danger when the Greeks were in Israel. Not a physical danger so much like the Romans posed, a spiritual danger, especially when they began decreeing against the Jews. You can't keep Shabbat, you can't do this. They wanted to eliminate some of those beautiful and important commandments that strengthen our bond with God and that basically remind us of who we are, our identity. Let's get rid of that. Let's erase that. Let's stop this. Let everybody become Greek. Let everybody believe in this value, not in what Judaism teaches. So you have a lot of Jews, unfortunately, that fell for it. They're weak, they're ignorant, or they were impressed, maybe. And that's why the Sinat Chinam, that baseless hatred, began to spread little by little until it brought about the destruction of the Second Temple, and we still have the problem till today. So the big question now is, how does one strengthen unity? What can one do? What are some ideas? We don't have the time to go through all the ideas, but just what are some of the ideas that one can do to strengthen that unity, the bond between us and others? And that can also be seen from this parasha, from Yosef and his brothers. If you recall, when you read the parasha, Yaakov tells Yosef, Go and check out your brothers. Go see what they're up to. Yosef was at home. He was learning with his dad. He was very close to Yaakov. Remember, this is the oldest child of Rachel. He loved him very much. So he was at home, not with the rest of the brothers who were older, and taking care of the animals. So Yaakov at some point tells him, why don't you go check them out? Why don't you go see what they're up to? But he uses a very interesting language. He uses the word Shalom Achecha. Go see the peace of your brothers. Now, even though what that really means, literally, go see how they're doing, if everything is okay. But this contains a very powerful message. Yaakov was aware of the problems between the brothers. He was aware of the Lashon Hara, the gossip, the politics, the lack of unity. Of course, he's aware. And he tells Yosef, now you have a chance to befriend them, to come closer to them. What should you do? Look at the positive qualities they have. Look at those areas that they are shalom, shalem, complete. And look away or ignore the negative that they may have. Why should you ignore the negative? Because we all have negative. No human being is perfect. If that's the case, why emphasize the negative? Look at the positive that they have.
To create peace.
You want to have peace, you want to bond with someone, you want to emphasize the positive, not the negative. If you emphasize the negative and you talk a lot about it, you won't be their friend, they won't want to see you, they won't want to talk to you. We all have weaknesses. And I'm sure this is what Yaakov was telling you, said we all have weaknesses. Therefore, you have a choice. You can choose to see the positive in every human being, and this will help you. How do you look at the positive? You sometimes have to look hard. Yes, it's not always evident. You have to look hard. Let me see if I can point out something good about him or her. If you try hard enough, you will find. The brothers are to blame. They didn't give Yosef a chance either. When he finally did arrive and check to see how they're doing, they already planned on killing him. Could you believe it? Let's get rid of him once and for all. Why don't you give him a chance to speak? Why don't you tell him the problem that you have with him? Even though they did tell him they're very upset at him. They were not hypocrites, that they smiled and hugged and kissed, but behind his back they told, no, they actually told him to his face. But here he's going on a mission. His father sent him. He's not just coming to see what they're doing. But they didn't know that. Oh, here comes the dreamer. What is he going to say to us now? Why is he coming to begin with? Why don't you give him a chance and hear what he has to say? Perhaps you want to criticize him? Fine, let him hear that criticism first. Give him a chance. They didn't give him a chance. Had they given him a chance, perhaps they would have come to some agreement. So you find that there are various individuals in this parasha who made mistakes. But I'm going to tell you right now that these individuals who made mistakes later corrected their mistakes. They did teshuvah. They repented. They realized where they went wrong. So that's good, because even though I'm going to point out the mistake, I want to already tell you now that these individuals are special, nonetheless, and they realize their mistake later on. So let's start with Yehuda. Yehuda appears to be the leader. Even though he's not the oldest, he appears to be a leader. They listen to what he has to say. Had he not said, sell him, they wouldn't have sold him. He was pretty much in charge. Yehuda says at some point later on, Ma betza ki naharog et achinu. What benefit do we gain if we kill our brother? He's after all our flesh. What benefit will we have? Let's sell him instead. What does this tell you? That Yehuda is calculating here what is more beneficial. Not necessarily what is right and what is wrong. What is more beneficial here? This calculation is bad. It's a wrong way of evaluating properly the situation. He's not being fair. Yosef also had a problem. When he saw what his brothers were doing, what he thought they were doing, what should he have done? Instead of just snitching on them, he should have given them the benefit of the doubt. And this is a quality that many, many people never learn enough. Whenever in doubt, and even if you're not in doubt, you really think that somebody did something wrong, give him the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps he didn't know, perhaps he didn't realize how serious it was. He made a mistake. There's a lot of ways where people can give the other the benefit of the doubt. Judge him favorably, not negatively. So Yehuda has this problem in how he judges Yosef. Yosef has this problem in how he judges the brothers. And why does Yosef have this problem? Because he's judging them from a distance. He didn't get too close to them to see, let me see, what were you doing before? So from a distance, he thought they were doing something wrong. The Midrash speaks exactly about what he thought he observed, but he was wrong. That's what's really a problem over here. It wasn't just that he said something not nice about them, he was actually wrong in his conclusions. Had you been a little closer, had you asked the person, what are you doing? You would have received the real answer and you would not have made that mistake of judging him negatively. So Yosef stumbles, Yehuda stumbles in how he judged the whole situation. But what happens at the end? At the end, they actually realized the mistake. And they went ahead repairing. Each one repaired his mistake in a different way. Take a look at Yehuda. Yehuda, how did he realize some of his mistakes? In Parashat Vayigash, 2 weeks from now, remember the battle between Yehuda and Yosef concerning Binyamin? Yosef is about to keep Binyamin in Egypt because he claims he stole the goblet, the kos. And even though everybody knows this was a trick, Yehuda is the most upset because he took responsibility for Binyamin from his father. And you know what Yehuda says to Yosef? Yosef, how could you do this? You know what pain this will cause our dad? Even if you're right, even though he's a thief, even though he's to blame, you know what pain this is going to cause his father? Yosef did not give him an answer right away. You know when he gave him an answer? When he revealed to them, I'm Yosef. Hey Yehuda, come here, I want to tell you something. Remember you asked me that question about how is our dad going to feel? Why does he deserve to be pained by Binyamin? How come you didn't think of that when you threw me into the pit? How come you didn't think of that when you sold me as a slave? Let's assume I was wrong. Let's assume, yes, I deserve it. Does our father deserve that pain? You see how he caught Yehuda? Yehuda had nothing to say. Yosef was right. Yehuda did not consider the whole picture. How could you do this? Even if you're right, that's not the smart thing to do, and it's definitely not the right thing to do either, morally, however you want to look at it. So, where do we see Yehuda does teshuvah? Yehuda has a lot of things happen to him in his life. If you read on, you will see that he got married, his wife passed away. His 2 kids, 2 out of the 3, died when they were young. A lot of tragedies. You think this is for nothing? The Torah records this to remind us, midah keneged midah. A lot of things happen to people, measure for measure. You brought on pain, unnecessary pain to a lot of people. You need an atonement. And his kapara perhaps is finally achieved or atoned for with the incident of Tamar. I'm not going to go through the whole incident, but if you recall, Tamar being his daughter-in-law was involved with him, and he didn't know that it was his daughter-in-law. And here they have children together, unbeknownst to him, he didn't know. It's very embarrassing later on when they find out that he's the father. But anyway, initially, he's told that his daughter-in-law committed an adulterous act and had illegitimate children here. And back then it was very, very serious. Yehuda, being somewhat of a judge, says, let her go be burnt. In other words, let her be killed. She deserves the death penalty. And what does she do? She says, not who the person is that fathered these children. I am pregnant to the one who gave me these items, these objects. She points to the objects. She had 3 objects that she had taken collateral from Yehuda until he sends what he said he would send her for payment. She didn't want to embarrass him in public. She said, I would rather die than embarrass this man in public. She's righteous from the very beginning. She did not make a mistake. She did the noble thing, the right thing. This incredible sacrifice was a very powerful lesson to Yehuda. Look, she didn't think of herself. She didn't think of her children. She didn't want to embarrass Yehuda. And Yehuda says, Tzadka mimeni, she was right. She's better than me. She's more righteous than me. He realized that when we judge a situation, we have to be very, very careful that it's not that it is in our interest that we do something, but in the interest of perhaps another human being, or perhaps what is right in the eyes of Hashem. Be careful when you judge a situation. Why are you doing what you're doing? So he learned his lesson. He atoned for it. He admitted to this. Yes, Tamar is right, it's me. That takes a lot of guts, a lot of courage. That is part of his teshuvah, part of his repentance. We see in this week's Parasha, Reuven also is involved in repentance. Even though the Torah does not describe it in detail, when he was away from the pit, when Yosef was there, he wasn't there. He would not have let them sell Yosef. The rabbis tell us he went back. He was busy. He was occupied with his teshuvah because of what he did to his father. He mixed up the beds once Rachel passed away. Instead of wanting Yaakov to be in the tent of Bilhah, he switched the beds and put Yaakov's bed in the tent of his own mother. It was wrong for him to do something like that. He had no permission, no right. Something so sensitive like that. But anyway, that's a whole different story. Reuven therefore also does what is right. He does teshuvah. He realizes he made a mistake. He was being too impulsive in deciding on his own without consulting if he should do it at all. What do we see so far? We see Yehuda and Reuven and later Yosef taking responsibility. And that is one of the important keys to understanding Chanukah. Taking responsibility. Who took responsibility in Chanukah? The Maccabim. Maccabim, they were priests. They don't go to war. They're involved and they're responsible for religion, for religious service. But here we have the Greeks decreeing against the Torah, against the Jewish people. And you have a lot of Jews, Hellenists, who says, let's just be easygoing with them. We don't want to fight them. We need to be flexible, right? And the Maccabim said, no way in the world. You want to be flexible? You want to compromise? Yafeh me'od. Psharot, compromise is something very, very noble and the right thing to do in court. If you're in court, in Bet Din, or in marriage, husband and wife, yes, compromise is a very, very good word. We should hear it more often, that there's compromise between people. But not in emunah, in your faith, you want to give it up. A lot of Jews throughout our history thought that by giving up and by being easygoing and flexible, that they're going to befriend the non-Jew. And he's going to leave them alone.
Like Moshe Dayan.
And what happened at the end? They hated us even more. Look what happened in Germany. Hitler, if your great-great-great-grandmother was Jewish, or your great-great-great-grandfather, makes no difference. Several generations before, they sent you to the camps. They don't want any vestige, any Jewish blood whatsoever. But these guys in Germany, they assimilated, they became more German than Jewish. So what? It didn't help them. They never learned a lesson. Many Jews never learned a lesson that by being like the others, you're not necessarily going to cause them to like you more. On the contrary, they're going to be very, very against you. They're going to show it to you. If anything, if you stick to your guns, if you stick to being who you are, that's when they will respect you, not the other way around. A lot of Jews made that mistake, that they thought this is the way to get out of this problem. What should they have thought? Wait a minute. Why are these Greeks causing so many problems here? Why are they against us? Why are they making these decrees to begin with? That's the question to ask, not to immediately do as they say. Rabbis tell us, if a person sees that many Yisurim, many problems are happening to him, he's suffering right and left, it cannot be his mazal. Nobody has such a bad mazal that on Monday his dentist tells him, you have 3 root canals, and on Tuesday his transmission goes kaput, and on Wednesday his plumbing bursts. All 3 major problems, major expenses, one after another. Nobody has such a bad mazal. When things happen one after another, the rabbis tell us, Yifashpesh b'ma'asav, examine your deeds. Examine your life. See, perhaps there's something wrong that you're doing. This is a wake-up call from Shamayim. Why is this happening? The Maccabim did that. The Maccabim took responsibility. They said, we are going to do something about this. What does Hashem want of us? Probably the Torah was weak. Torah observation perhaps was weak at that point. Many Jews were becoming detached. Voluntarily becoming detached from the Torah. Hashem says, I'm going to send them a powerful message. You don't like it, you don't want it, I'm going to get the Greek to detach you even more. And let's see what you do, how you react then. The Maccabim got the message. Our reaction needs to be not to compromise, not to give in, or do what? To fight for it. To try to get those decrees abolished. And if that doesn't help, to fight the Greeks. Not to give in. This is a time to fight for what you believe in. That's what Hashem wants to see. And that's why they saw miracles. They won. The Greeks remained in Israel, but the decrees were abolished. Hashem was with them. They were right. This is all called taking responsibility. A lot of people run away from responsibility by giving in, by just saying it's okay, we'll do as you say, just to please them. You can't do that when it comes to your faith. Otherwise, you will disappear completely. There's no compromise on the mitzvah, on what the Torah says. Compromise with human beings concerning your relationship with them, in business and in marriage. Compromise there is a beautiful thing to do, but not your faith. So you have Yehuda taking responsibility for all that he has done. Promising Yaakov, I'm going to bring him back. Binyamin, don't worry. You see from all his actions later on that he learned the mistakes that he made. And now he's serious. He's going to fight for Binyamin if he has to. You see how there's a change in Yehuda? What change do we see by Yosef? Yosef also learned. They all learned the hard way, unfortunately. So what happened to Yosef? Mr. Yosef, it wasn't nice of you to tell on your brothers. You know what's going to happen to you? Somebody's going to tell on you. Who told on him? Eshet Potifar. This Jew came to make fun of us. He attempted to violate me. And I yelled out. And she made up the story. It never happened. She's the one that went after him. But what did he do when she tried hard? He ran away. He did run away. But the Torah first says, Vayima'en, he refused her proposal. He refused to commit a sin. He says to her, how could I do something like this? V'chatati lelokim, I'll be going against God. Wow! All of a sudden he says something. Yosef, how come you didn't say that the first time, in the very beginning? He was younger. He didn't realize it. How could you talk about others? How could you judge them negatively? How come you didn't investigate it fully? Don't you know that this is also a chatat lelokim? So Yosef realizes this, and therefore now runs away from sin, wants nothing to do with, doesn't even think twice about it. Perhaps I should give in. After all, she's an important lady. And after all, if I want to be promoted, I have to cooperate. There's a lot of ways that people would think of why yes to give in. Yosef realizes right away this is a test. And he's already done teshuvah. He already realizes that he was wrong. Therefore, he runs out. Whenever we see something wrong, whenever we see that there is a bad decree, it is a sign from Shamayim that we have to repair something. Decrees don't happen for no reason. Whether it's today in Europe that some countries want to outlaw circumcision, outlaw shechita, ritual slaughter. All of a sudden, it was okay all these years. Why are you waking up one morning and deciding to outlaw it? It's from Shamayim. Are we going to fight for it? Are we going to do anything about it? Just going to give in? We're being constantly tested, constantly reminded of our identity. And we can't just be easygoing and flexible. You can't fight City Hall. As they say, I think in some languages, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
That's not true. Not for emunah. Your emunah, to just join them, you will disappear. Therefore, the rabbis remind us that whenever we see something is just not right, it's a wake-up call. Now, this something not right happens many times in real life, but sometimes it happens in a dream, that we are being told that something's not right. That's why Yosef had those dreams. Yosef needs to know this right away. He will be in a position of leadership. He will have authority. He better know about these things, the importance of unity. The Hellenists, unfortunately, did not understand any of the messages, did not pay attention. And that is why they assimilated. The baseless hatred that later on emerged amongst the Jewish people was also something that we are still yet to learn. How serious it is, how bad it is. It hasn't been repaired completely, even though Baruch Hashem, one can say that there's a lot of acts of kindness today. People really help each other. People are sensitive towards others, but there's still a problem. There's still a lot of too much divisiveness. This is all from Sinat Chinam. People have to take responsibility, and that means doing something about it. Not just saying, there's nothing I can do. What should I do? Everybody's like that. Everybody does it. Everybody says Lashon Hara. No. Don't see what others are doing. If you know something is wrong, take responsibility and you do something about it. Yosef lands in jail eventually, where he spends 12 years. It's interesting. Why is he there for so long? What did Yosef do to be in jail? So the rabbis tell us he was only supposed to be there 10 years. But because he depended on the butler, Sarah Mashkin, please do me a favor, get me out of here. They added 2 more years to his sentence. It was Shamayim added 2 more years. But wait a minute, what about the first 10 years? What did he do to deserve to be 10 years in jail? I haven't seen too many commentaries talk about that. But Kabbalistically, we do know that everything is an atonement. Nothing happens for no reason. Even though the accusations against him were false, what he did to the wife of Potiphar. What did we say just now? She accused him because he had accused his brothers. How many brothers did he accuse? 10. That's the way I explain it. Okay? So you have 10 years because you accused 10 brothers. He is number 11, and Binyamin, of course, is number 12. He didn't accuse Binyamin. He was too young. So, 10 years as an atonement for what you did. Remember, you did the wrong thing. To accuse your brothers of something which is totally false. You will be accused of somebody totally false. You will atone for it in jail. But what about those 2 extra years? So we say those 2 extra years is because he trusted in the butler. He depended on him. You're supposed to depend on Hashem. Now, even though you're allowed to make an effort, there's nothing wrong by asking people a favor, and you remind yourself at all times, even though I'm asking him a favor, I know he's only a messenger, I depend only on God. So there's nothing wrong with asking for a favor if you know that this is what you need to do and you have no other choice. Who doesn't want to get out of jail? So what's the problem with Yosef? what most people don't realize, it wasn't just so much the asking of a favor of a butler. It was the fact that he added some extra unnecessary words. Mr. Butler, do me a favor and get me out of here. Speak up for me, because I don't deserve having been thrown into jail. I was sold as a slave, he meant by his brothers, and even here, I didn't do anything to deserve this. You know what's going on upstairs when he said those words? Yosef, did you just say you don't deserve this? It's not coming to you? 2 more years. What kind of a thing is that? Everything that we undergo, everything that we experience in life, magia, as we say in Hebrew, it's coming for some reason. It's a kapara, it's an atonement. Just say, Gam zu letovah, this is for the good.
No complaints.
I accept it with love. Obviously, I'm not so happy about it, but I realize it's an atonement. An atonement is good. It cleans one up. Yosef learns. And how do we know that Yosef learned his lesson? Remember, now he's saying, I don't deserve it. How do we know Yosef learned his lesson? Later on, when the brothers meet and embrace, the brothers feel bad what they did to Yosef. Remember, they also do teshuvah, they also repent. So they ask forgiveness. And Yosef says, you think you did it? It's not your fault. Hashem made it happen. Hashem wanted me to come to Egypt. Just indirectly, it was through you. Obviously, they did the wrong thing. They're still to blame for what they did. They caused tremendous anguish to their father. And they caused another human being a lot of pain here. But this, in the end, had to happen one way or another. If it wouldn't have been through the brothers, it would have been through someone else. Yosef had to eventually come to Egypt. Eventually, everybody was going to go to Egypt. The rabbis remind us that it's an Aramaic expression. Rabbis tell us that where one needs to be, his feet will take him. Wherever we need to be, our feet will take us there, whether we want it or not. All of this, what we see this week's parasha and the coming week's parashiot, is all a clear indication of the hashgacha of Hashem, of the divine providence, on how He makes all of these things happen. We still have free will, of course, in how we react and how we deal with situations. We see that many of the decisions that were made by Yosef and his brothers were the wrong decisions. They are to blame for it. But at the very least they did teshuvah. What we have left now is to figure out how do we exercise our judgment properly. We see a situation, how do we evaluate it properly and not make a mistake? People sometimes misjudge a situation very easily. So we said earlier that a very important key in helping us avoid mistakes and enabling us to do the right thing is to give the benefit of the doubt, right? To give the benefit of the doubt is always something important to do, regardless. Sometimes it's difficult to give the benefit of the doubt because it's obvious to us. It's obvious to us that something is wrong. So we're going to take action. We're going to do something about it. You can't just sit back and do nothing. Sometimes it's called upon us, it's expected of us to take action. The Maccabim took action. They knew it was obviously wrong what was happening. It's not that they just couldn't tolerate it. They realized that that's what Shamayim wants them to do. They should act. But how do they know for sure if what they're about to do is correct? Or how do they know if they're judging the situation correctly? The only way one can really have siyata d'shmaya, which means divine assistance, that he should be successful in analyzing properly the situation, in coming up with the right solution, and in dealing with it correctly, is if he always strives to do things l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. That is the key to just about everything in life. If we want to be successful, if we want to make sure we do the right thing, we have to train ourselves to do everything for the sake of heaven, not for our own gain and not for our own benefit. This is the problem of politicians. You think they do anything l'shem shamayim? It's only for themselves. They want to be re-elected, not even for their constituents, not necessarily, no. A lot of people, a great number of people, are simply selfish. They think of themselves. If they don't have proper direction or proper outlook towards life, this is the way they will act. Like an animal acts by instinct. So the human being, by instinct, naturally thinks of himself first. To be unselfish, to be altruistic, to do something for someone else, it takes a different kind of thinking. It's not the normal way of thinking for a human being. Who's directing him to do that? His Yetzer HaTov, his good inclination, not his evil inclination. But that good inclination is dormant. The Yetzer HaTov is not always awake. The evil inclination is usually much more active in many people. That's why people are focused on what's good for them. If a person trains himself to do things l'shem shamayim, I only want to do what's right in the eyes of Hashem. I want to do it for His sake, for His honor. Then hopefully what will happen, he will do what is right instead of what is worth it for him. When you don't do things l'shem shamayim, the judgment will come up with what is preferably for you, what is worth it for you. What are you going to gain out of this? If you do things l'shem shamayim, you have a better chance that you're going to end up doing not what's more beneficial for you, but what is right and what is wrong. To know right from wrong is not always easy. That's why it's important to do l'shem shamayim. So what do we see in the parasha? That all of the main stars, they learned the hard way. A lot of times Hashem teaches us very painful lessons the hard way if they don't figure this out on their own. Hashem wants us to figure it out on our own. And the first step for Him to let us know that something is wrong, believe it or not, is in the dream. Not necessarily physically. The wake-up call is usually first in a dream. And that dream, by the way, can happen a couple years before what is expected to happen in the future. They're already telling you in advance, get ready for something. We always see the future in our dream, but most of us forget what we saw in the dream. Later on, years later, we say, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Deja vu. It could either be in a previous reincarnation, or it could simply be in a dream. You saw this already. You saw this many years before, because this is what is going to be happening soon. So it's not just about future events. It's also perhaps a message of how you should be careful when this does happen, in dealing with it properly. Just to end, even though we've been talking a little bit about the mistakes that the tribes committed, and as we said before, we all make mistakes. The Torah records these mistakes so that we should learn from them. And we are reminded that Yehuda and Yosef, who are the main stars, not only did they correct their mistakes, Mashiach comes out from them. So these are not just ordinary people out there that acted in a very bad way. No. These are great people. These are people that we should look up to. These are people that did some beautiful and important things, despite the fact that they may have erred and may have done something wrong in their earlier years. At the very least, even though you made a mistake, at the very least, take action to correct it. As I've explained in the past, Bashamayim in heaven, when they point out what we did wrong, they're not going to just point it out, because they realize that we sometimes succumb to the evil inclination. What are they upset at? Why didn't you take action to correct it? You did something wrong, why didn't you do teshuvah? Why didn't you repent? You did something wrong to your wife, to your husband, why didn't you say, I'm sorry? It happens, we do something wrong, we make mistakes. But why didn't you take responsibility? So this fits in very much into the story of the Maccabim, because the Maccabim teach us, take responsibility. If there's nobody else to do something about it, then you be the one to do it. And if you're the one that made the mistake to begin with, the more so. Take action to correct it. In the end, Yosef reminds us all that whatever has happened, even though it was painful, even though it was very, very sad that Yaakov had to feel that way for so long about his son, thinking that he was killed by an animal, despite all of that, Yosef reminds us at the very end, everything was letova. In the end, everything that has happened, even that which was painful, even that which happened to Yaakov, everything was for the good. Also, important idea to always keep in mind, of course, there are sometimes things that we can improve, sometimes that we can do things a little bit different, a little bit better, but the rest is up to Hashem. And even if things don't turn out the way we would have wanted to, we must remember, as long as we're not to blame 100% for it, sometimes we will merit to see, wow, now all of it makes sense. It was all meant for the good. And that is what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. Many, many terrible, terrible things happened to the Jewish people in this long exile, this long diaspora. A lot of it, of course, we're to blame. But in the end, everything that has happened is all destined to happen, one way or another. Either because we need an atonement, or because Hashem has some other plan for us. We don't see the good in it. When Mashiach comes, we will see the good. On that day, the verse says, Az yimales chok pino. When that happens, when we gain clarity, we'll say, wow, we will be so overjoyed. Our mouth will be full of praise. We will laugh as though this is just a bad dream. So I wish all of you to have sweet dreams, good dreams. But more important than that, realize that more important than a dream is the real life. When we see things, we observe all kinds of things. Meshamayim, they're letting us know all kinds of things. There's all kinds of indicators. You're walking down the street and a homeless person yells at you and says something. Pay close attention. Maybe that is also something that Shamayim wants you to hear. Things don't just happen by chance. But in the end, even though you don't understand it, just remember, everything is for the good.